Want to welcome Sara to who is going to present Johnson and Johnson's journey into DAM. There's a couple of reminders. Um, is another track one. If you were looking for that, you can go up to the top to the agenda in track one to get to Edwards Life Sciences session, if that's what you were looking for. And for this session, once Sara has completed her presentation, we'll have a short Q&A. You'll see at the bottom right chat window, and you can talk to each other through the chat. But if you have questions specifically for Sara, put those in the Q&A and I will present those at the end. And just as a reminder, if you are staying for the session after this for Charlene Lewis, there's a really tight turnaround on that. So we will be ending on time and I've got to scoot over to that one. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sara, if you could take it away.
Thank you so much, John. And thank you to everybody who has stuck in on this Friday afternoon to join me and hear a little bit about our journey within Johnson & Johnson Consumer Health with implementing a digital asset management capability and maturing it over the last several years. I am part of our global technology organization and have responsibility for some of our digital capabilities, including specifically digital asset management, our PIM capabilities, product information management, and also some new capabilities that we're looking to bring into the organization as we think about all of the upstream processes that go into the creation and the approval and the planning that goes into creating marketing content from an end-to-end perspective. And I'll talk a little bit more about that during the presentation. So a little bit about Johnson & Johnson. If you're not familiar with our organization, our consumer health sector is one of three sectors across, medical device sector, our pharmaceutical sector, and Janssen, and then our consumer health business. So our digital asset management capability I'm going to speak to you about today is specifically the one that we use across our skin health, self-care, and essential health brands, and the consumer health franchise specifically. We have over 200 brands globally that are leveraging and using our digital asset management platform around the world. And so hopefully many of you recognize a lot of these brands and know and love them and have them in your homes. So what I wanted to speak to you about today, this is sort of an overview of our journey with digital asset management since 2014. In 2014, I was involved in the implementation of our first global digital asset management solution. We had an existing capability that had been rolled out in our EMEA region. And it had also been leveraged to some extent in Asia Pacific as well. And so given that we had an existing technology, there was a decision made, okay, let's just take what we already have and scale that to North America and Latin America. So we worked closely with the vendor and agency involved in that capability and worked to adapt it to our global needs and rolled that out in 2014 as our global solution. At the same time, we were also looking at product information and how to better streamline our processes around ensuring access and a source of truth for product data. And so we launched our PIM capability in 2015, which included an integration to our DAM at the time. And so we were able to pull through pack shots and enhanced content from our DAM into our PIM. And what you'll notice on this roadmap is that there was not a lot of activity shown on here for several years. And one of the lessons learned that we'll talk about today is that, this was really just a technology implementation. We didn't have the governance and the people and the process in place to really support and drive adoption and use of the capability. And so fast forward to 2017, there was a recognition within marketing that there was a missed opportunity there. And there was a big opportunity to look at how we could get more use out of our existing creative assets. We have a lot of smart people in different regions and pockets of the world. And how do we use the creative material that's already out there and reuse it across brands, across countries, across region to get the best out of the work that we've already done? And so as part of that assessment and recognition that we needed to do something to enable greater reuse of content, we did an evaluation and realized that we didn't have the right technology to really properly scale and support our enterprise needs for digital asset management. But we also needed to put more of the people and the process around it and drive better ownership and accountability for really leveraging the solution the way it had the potential to be used. So in 2018, we migrated from that legacy dam solution over to a new platform, an enterprise dam solution. And we really matured the features and the functions and the capabilities of the platform and developed a roadmap over several years of enhancements and optimizations that we could make to the capability, as well as integrating it more within our broader marketing technology ecosystem. So over the next couple of years, what you see in here is a lot of integrations and new features and work that we did around data and really understanding how it was being used, who was using it, where are the opportunities to fill some of the gaps and increase adoption and change management in the use of our dam, and integrating other sources of creative assets from within and outside the organization to really ensure that our dam was a single source of truth for all of our marketers around the world to access creative material. So what I'll talk to you as well about later on is our aspirations around DAM 3.0 and where we're going next in 2021 and beyond in our journey to really mature the DAM strategy for consumer health. So if we take a step back and talk about, where we were before we had a dam, this is probably a visual that many of you can relate to in the sense that we didn't have a centralized solution to manage all of our creative assets, which meant our marketers, our cross-functional partners, our agency partners were essentially going on a scavenger hunt to find creative assets that was living all over the place. So a lot of wasted time and wasted effort, and not a very easy way for people to find existing creative that they could leverage and reuse to limit costs for the organization, but also drive consistency in the brand experience for our consumers as well. So with DAM 1.0, what we were able to achieve was really the technology aspect of it, creating a centralized platform so that we had one place for all of our creative material across digital, print, TV, video, brand assets and imagery and logos and things of that sort, all centralized in one place. The ability for our agency partners or internal teams to easily upload their assets to that centralized platform and tag the assets with metadata so that others could go in and search and find that creative material. We had some ability to allow, image conversion and reformatting of assets for different use cases. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the integration from our DAM to our PIM to support the e-commerce channel. So that sort of brought us a step forward, at least in having everything centralized in one place. But as I said, there were still a lot of opportunities there and lessons learned for us from that experience and what we needed to do to really evolve and step change our DAM capability. So from a DAM 2.0 perspective, we were really focused around not just the technology this time, but the people and the process and the governance to go with it. So in this slide, what you see is everything in red were sort of table stakes. They were basic DAM capabilities that we had enabled with our DAM 1.0 solution and carried forward into DAM 2.0. What was different was everything in blue. And so you can see over the last few years, we've done a lot of work to mature the strategy and the capability of DAM and to add on data and insights and the ability to really understand how the capability was being used. So on the left, you see additional inputs into our DAM that we developed over the last few years. So we automated the process to get stock images and assets from external stock houses into our DAM. We've integrated with our media distribution partner to automate TVC and video assets that were living outside of our DAM, and allow those to be brought into the DAM so that it's truly a single source of truth to access all of these different types of creative. And then the other element from an inbound perspective was also thinking about our product hierarchy and how could we allow people to easily find and search assets within our DAM by searching based on product information that they know and use every day. So we have a global commercial product hierarchy that sits outside of our ERP system that's much more commercial friendly than the standard finance hierarchy that lives within our ERP. So we use that as a source to have consumer-friendly terminology and tagging on assets within DAM to allow our marketers to more easily find the assets. So those are just some examples of some of the integrations that we built to bring data into our DAM. And then all around DAM itself, we developed a lot of enhancements and features and integrations into the platform for other types of use cases. So as I mentioned, we migrated to a new platform, which was not an easy task. We had 30,000+, I think actually 50,000 assets in our DAM 1.0. And so we had to go through a very lengthy exercise to cleanse the assets and the metadata transform the metadata into a new metadata structure and taxonomy, and really do a lot of heavy lifting around that to make sure we weren't putting garbage in to the new DAM solution. And so we worked with a strategic vendor that we picked as part of an RFP process to identify the DAM platform we wanted to move to. We made sure we had an enterprise platform that could really grow and evolve with our needs as an organization. And we revamped the metadata model with support from a taxonomist that we brought in to have that expertise to understand existing data models within J&J. How could we map and leverage existing data that people know and recognize and build that into the metadata model to help users with search. We also have enabled AI technology to automate metadata tagging based on, character recognition, image recognition, and some specific features that are available through the AI technology that we're using. And that's helped with search as well to augment the tagging that's done manually with automated metadata values that can enhance the search experience for our users. The other components of this are, focused around governance and change management and training. So a lot of effort has gone into, driving communications, making sure we had points of contact in each of the regions to work with and partner on scaling the communications, the training, and the change management right down into the local markets. So there are leads in each of the regions that have been appointed to partner with us at the global level to make sure we have the reach that we need to get into the local markets, work with the local agencies to make sure assets are being uploaded to the platform. And ensuring we have repetitive, consistent communications on a constant basis has been really important as well. The last couple of things I'll touch on here, the DAM librarian model is something we didn't have with our DAM 1.0 solution. So we today have 6 global DAM librarians that support the QA review and approval of all of the assets that get uploaded into the system. They work directly with agencies in the local markets to help them with uploads and training around the metadata model, making sure that there's consistency in how assets are being tagged in the system. And that's been really fundamental to help make sure that we had people who are actively managing the content and the data within the platform. From a usage rights perspective, we have basic usage rights metadata. This is a big opportunity for us to improve upon as we look at DAM 3.0, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Basic metadata around usage rights isn't enough, and we really need to do more around sort of making sure there's compliance and adherence to the usage rights associated with our assets. And then lastly, reporting and analytics and ROI tracking has been super critical for us. We've built some custom Tableau dashboards that integrate data from our DAM platform with our Active Directory data, along with data from Google Analytics, so that we can get a 360-degree view of all of the activity and the events that are happening within DAM, and use that data not only to understand who's using it and who's not, and arm our regional leads with information to help them understand where there are opportunities to drive change management or improve training and things like that, but also to quantify the ROI and the value that DAM is bringing to the organization. And I'll speak a little bit more about our ROI model in a little bit. So from a DAM 2.0 perspective, I wanted to also share a few examples with you of how our DAM solution has helped to really accelerate e-commerce during this COVID pandemic over the last year or so. I have 3 sort of key examples to share with you today of the way our DAM has been used to access and leverage content to drive greater speed to market and getting revised and refreshed content up online to support growth and going where our consumers are going during the COVID pandemic. So we've seen people reusing assets from DAM and adapting creative that was intended for the digital shelf and a customer promotion, and downloading that asset, giving it to their agency partner, and then making some minor changes to the asset for a social media channel, for example. And that example that we were given by one of our brand teams was that there was virtually no cost to do that really small adaptation, and they were able to turn around the edit and the approval of that revised asset within less than 2 weeks, which for us, is pretty remarkable and much better than it would have been had they had to recreate something from scratch. In the second example, I think this is somewhat self-explanatory, but providing new visuals and context for our brand teams, allowing them to access existing creative that is, more relevant in the current context with social distancing guidelines or mask wearing guidelines, and bringing that creative forward so that people around the world can benefit and leverage that creative for updating their existing content. And then on the third example, it's about cross-country leverage. So in this example, our Canadian brand team and digital shelf team were able to find US assets that had been uploaded to the DAM as part of their push to accelerate e-commerce. And they took those 200 assets, downloaded them, made some minor changes to them, and were able to get those up on the digital shelf in Canada 2 to 3 times faster than it would have taken them ordinarily to create and get their own assets approved and up on the digital shelf. So just a few examples there of how our DAM has really helped to surface creative for different needs across the organization and driven a lot faster speed to market and cost efficiency for the organization. So also wanted to share with you, a little bit more about that value proposition and how we've quantified the value of DAM for our organization. The way we look at it is from primarily 2 different parameters or perspectives on the value that DAM has brought. From a marketing cost avoidance perspective, we look at the number of assets being downloaded between countries. So meaning that a user in one country is downloading an asset that originated in a different market. And then using some very, very conservative assumptions to say, okay, not 100% of everything downloaded between countries is actually being adapted or reused, but applying a very conservative assumption to that number, and then calculating, based on the number of cross-country downloads and that conservative min-max range, what is the net cost savings we're getting by adapting an asset versus what it would have cost to create the asset from scratch. So that in totality, if we look at our metrics from DAM on the number of cross-country downloads and we look at average procurement costs with agencies to create versus adapt assets by asset type, that overall picture gives us a very good sense of the cost avoidance that we're generating for the organization by having a place for people to go to find and reuse creative. The second parameter is around productivity savings. And so for us, if you recall one of my first slides from before DAM 1.0 with people having to go and scavenger hunt for assets all around the organization and externally, there is a time savings we can quantify by having a place for people to go to find existing creative rather than emailing a dozen people and searching in a dozen different places. So we've quantified that time savings, and that has essentially for us amounted to 1,400 days of time given back to the business by having a DAM and a single place for people to go to find creative. So the combination of that marketing cost avoidance, the productivity savings, less the costs that we invest in continuing to optimize and subscribe to our DAM platform, provides us with a net return on investment that is 8 times the cost that we invest in having the capability. So that story is something that we worked with our regional teams to align on and have a lot of support for having a model and a reference point that allows us to get the support that we need on an annual basis to continue to invest in optimizing and integrating the capability into our broader ecosystem. So moving on to DAM 3.0, what I'm going to talk to you next is about our journey moving forward and where we are today versus what our aspirations are to evolve our DAM strategy as we go forward. So in this visual, again, you see everything that we are carrying forward with us as part of DAM 2.0 into DAM 3.0 in red. And then the areas that we're going to focus on to continue to expand on our DAM capability are in blue. And so one of the opportunities that we see is that we don't have a connection of our DAM into our creative workflow process in terms of how marketing is engaging with agency partners on the creation of new content and how that content flows through the approval process and copy approval. And so there's an opportunity for us as we evolve our marketing technology stack and ecosystem to think about how we create that type of a capability and how should that connect into our DAM to automate the process for assets flowing and uploading into our DAM to support content management and content distribution needs downstream. The other components that we're looking at within our dam itself is usage rights, as I mentioned. So that's an area of opportunity for us to think more about digital rights management and how to more actively manage the usage rights associated with our assets and bring that data forward to our marketers so that they understand what the constraints are with adapting and reusing assets and what they need to do to extend usage rights if they want to leverage some existing creative. So we're doing some work around exploring our options there and what that solution is going to look like and how that connects with our dam. And then, if you think about this from a downstream perspective and really connecting dam into the ecosystem, not just as a destination for assets, but more as a content as a service, a downstream to support multiple different channels and needs. So we're thinking about how does dam connect in to our brand.com website properties to automate the flow of content into our brand websites. Also, how could dam connect to our social media channels for the same type of purpose? And then we're also looking at how we can connect our dam into our creative intelligence and analytics solutions. So how do we get data around media ROI, content performance data around, the quality and the hygiene of our content, and use that data to bring it back into dam to really help users understand how an asset is performing, whether the quality of the content is good or not, and that will help them make decisions around whether it makes sense to adapt or reuse an asset, understanding the quality and the performance of that asset based on previous use cases. So those are some of the opportunities that we see with DAM 3.0. And if I zoom out a little bit more, for us, DAM is really an integral part of what we refer to as our end-to-end content supply chain. So much like we think about our product supply chain and the manufacturing and planning and distribution of our products, we need to think the same way about our content and our creative. And so for us, we're thinking about the full end-to-end process around how new products are developed and launched, how that translates into claims and packaging design, which then need to feed in to this content supply chain. And the whole process within marketing around how they're budgeting for marketing spend from a working and a non-working media perspective, how that drives the campaign planning and scheduling process, and then into the content creation workflow and approval process, which ultimately should be sort of an end-to-end seamless workflow that drives the whole content operations capability and connects to our DAM and our PIM, which are then being used to manage and distribute that content downstream. And then how do we then connect in the data, as I mentioned, around the sales, the content performance and intelligence data, which can then be used to bring back into this marketing content supply chain to drive decision-making around optimizing marketing spend and optimizing our campaigns and really creating this closed loop supply chain within our organization, within marketing. So lastly, this is sort of just a last slide to sort of recap the lessons learned that we've had in our journey to DAM 3.0 over the last 7 years or so. And so as we talked about, DAM 1.0 for us was really about having a platform to centralize assets in one place. But what we quickly realized is that we can build a solution, but that doesn't mean people are going to come and use it. And so without the people and the process and the governance, the technology alone, doesn't matter how good it is not going to succeed. So with DAM 2.0, we've put a lot of time and focus and resources into really rounding out our technology with the people and the process and the governance. And some of the key learnings for us have been making sure you have repetitive, consistent, and frequent communications and training. There's a lot of turnover within agency partners. There's a lot of turnover within our brand teams. And so we need to consistently refresh and communicate with a consistent message, both internally and externally to our agency partners. The other component of this is the DAM librarians, which I'm sure many of you have heard in other sessions throughout the week. A lot of talk about DAM librarians and the role that they play in really managing the health and the hygiene and the quality of the data within DAM. I've talked a lot with different people about the fact that people expect a Google-like experience everywhere they go now, and they expect the same experience with digital asset management. But the reality is DAM will never likely be a Google-like experience from a search perspective. So you have to put the time and the effort and the resources into managing the assets and the metadata in the system to make that as accurate as possible, as consistent as possible, and to make sure that the metadata resonates with how users are searching for assets in the DAM. Otherwise, they're never going to find what they're looking for, especially as your library of assets within the DAM grows. We have over 75,000 assets within our DAM, and it's very hard for people to find what they're looking for if you don't have quality metadata. The governance model is obviously part of that as well, but having regional leads to work with us and support us at the global level and making sure the messaging is resonating and landing in each of the regions and in the local markets has also been extremely important. And then lastly, the major learning or piece of advice I would have with DAM 2.0 for us has been that focus on data and analytics, using the data to tell the story around who's using the platform from a brand perspective, from a market, from a region perspective, and making sure that there's visibility to the use of the DAM, and using the data to help you build your story around the ROI and the value that the capability is bringing to the organization. And lastly, with DAM 3.0, I think the realization for us has been that DAM on its own is not supporting the needs of the organization when you think about automation and efficiency in the end-to-end flow of content. And so how do you think about DAM as part of that supply chain and enabling assets and creative to flow through from the beginning of the process all the way through to the end when you're reaching your patient or your consumer, and using the data on that content to feed back into the process. So with that, that's all I had to share today. Thank you so much for the time, and I'll turn it back over to you, John.
All right, thank you, Sara. That was great. Your journey was, that's a lot. There's a lot there. I know you guys probably think about this in your sleep sometimes. I've got just a few questions from the attendees. First one is, you pointed out that you have accommodation for stock photography. And so the question is that through an integration? And if so, how do you manage that from a purchase perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So originally it was manual. So we started working with some of our stock houses that we have agreements with, and we're able to just get them to send us reports and extracts of the assets that we had purchased in the past, or different marketers had purchased. So they had a record of everything J&J had purchased, and we were able to migrate those into our DAM. And we were doing that on a periodic basis, but it's a heavy lift. It's a lot of work to get the extracts, get the assets uploaded, fill in all the metadata, and augment the metadata with what we needed for our DAM. So we've recently just launched an automated integration with one of our stock houses. We're working with the other one to integrate that as well. And depending on the stock house and their capabilities and how they structure the data around who has rights to the assets and who's purchased it, it can be more complicated. But that automation has been really key for us to eliminate manual error and make the assets available in more real time to the broader organization.
Okay. And then the next two questions, I'm going to just combine them because I think they're pretty much the same. When you talk about your DAM team and you talk about governance, who specifically makes up that DAM team or the governance teams at J&J?
So from a business perspective, we partner with the consumer experience organization, which is a part of marketing. There's a global CXO organization, and then there are versions of that within each of our regions within CXO. So we have a global lead who's the business owner for our DAM, and then we have counterparts in each of the regions that's a designated DAM lead.
Okay. And then I guess my last piece, you mentioned your medical and legal review process with creative. Is that a completely standalone process for you right now?
Right now, yes. I mean, and it's not consistent. So in different parts of the world, in some regions, they have a system that manages that process. In some places, it's an offline manual process. So, part of what we're looking at as we think about that end-to-end content supply chain is how do we drive consistency and bring that into a marketing workflow in some way, because really that is so fundamental to the creation of content, the approval and the distribution of the content. And so in our mind, that needs to be an end-to-end workflow, and how we integrate that or leverage that capability we'll need to figure out as we go forward.
Okay, great. I think we're out of time. We got another session coming up. So thank you, Sarah. That was awesome.